Hi, I'm Priya Dutt, chairperson of Nargis Dutt Foundation. And today I'm going to be in conversation with a very interesting lady, Shalini Kedia, who's a chairperson of Fragile X Society. Now, I have been working with disability for more than 4 or 5 years in Spastic Society of India, now ADAPT. And I hadn't heard of this condition, Fragile X. So you can imagine how many people out there, I think most of the population out there, wouldn't have heard of Fragile X. So I want to begin this conversation as a layperson, just someone who is completely not knowledgeable about this condition. And I want to ask Shalini. Hi, Shalini.
Hi.
It's so wonderful to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And like I said, I'm completely clueless about this condition, though I worked with disability. Can you tell me a little bit about Fragile X? What is Fragile X?
So, Fragile X is one of the leading causes of inherited intellectual disability and autism amongst children.
Okay, so it's different from autism.
It can cause autism,
Okay.
and it is different from autism because the symptoms may vary and the treatment does vary.
Okay. Okay, and how does the treatment vary? Because we've seen a lot of children with autism and we've seen the therapy they have to have and, but why is Fragile X different?
So, in Fragile X, we're talking about a particular gene which has shut down and is not doing its job, which was to produce a protein. So, we actually know the exact part that is missing in the brain and is hampering the brain development. So, what we talk about treatment is trying to get the brain to function without the protein and trying to manage the manifestations of the brain not having the protein. For example, a child who has Fragile X syndrome will have very high level of anxiety.
Okay.
And that anxiety is going to come in the way of his learning and his growth. It is going to be a hindrance when he goes for speech therapy, when he's trying to learn things. If you and I have anxiety today and we're asked a question, we might even give our name wrong.
Right.
So the first thing we tell the family is try to, make it a very low anxiety environment, which can be done with a lot of therapy, some changes in the house, and for some children, medication also.
So it's really very similar to autism, when you're talking about anxiety in children.
Right.
So it can be misunderstood, right? I mean, a child could have Fragile X, but the parents would never know.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that there is a test.
Right.
And it is genetic.
Right.
So how do you go about that? How can a parent recognize that my child has Fragile X, and what are the steps the parent must do? If you could just give us an idea, is that how do you really get to know about Fragile X when it's so close to autism? It's, you can really, not even consider anything else and
Absolutely.
get diagnosed with autism.
So, ideally, in a very ideal situation, any child who receives a diagnosis of autism should be suggested testing for Fragile X.
Okay.
That's a very ideal situation.
Yeah.
Having said that, if that does not happen, we do have some red flags which we've really talked about extensively. One of them being wanting to be social.
Right.
A child with autism will not want to be social. A child with Fragile X will want to be social.
Oh, okay.
So, if you ever come across a child who's got autism and is trying to be social, red flag.
Red flag, okay.
Test the child for Fragile X syndrome. We had a case study around 2 years ago where this family came in from Delhi. They met a leading neuropediatrician in Mumbai. A 2-year-old baby diagnosed with autism, and the doctor was very well versed with Fragile X. He realized that the child is trying to make friends with him and make eye contact and trying to play with things. He immediately said, I want to test for Fragile X. Believe me, it came out positive.
Wow. When you talk about doctors, you think most of these doctors are really aware of Fragile X, because wouldn't they really then recommend this to a lot of parents, and does the medical fraternity also need to look at this seriously
So-
and have it under their radar?
So the thing is, the gene responsible for Fragile X syndrome, that's
Right.
the FMR1 gene, was only discovered in the year 1991,
Okay.
which is actually very recent. Now, when we look at doctors who are out there practicing, they have studied very little about the condition.
Correct. Okay.
So we have taken it upon us to elucidate symptoms and different ways to catch the condition and make the doctors more aware about it. In the year 2018, with the help of the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, we launched the guidelines for Fragile X in India,
Right.
which was done for the first time. But again, what happens is in India, every doctor is looking into every condition. It's
True.
not that one doctor is only
Focused.
looking at autism or one doctor is only looking at Down syndrome. So we do understand that it might not be on the top of their head when they see a child with autism to test for
To
Fragile
test
X.
for-
So at our organization, it is a very, very big goal and a dream that every doctor be well versed with Fragile X syndrome. But what we've also done is we've started making the mass aware about it. And we've seen that make a difference.
Correct.
So we've seen a lot of families when they've read about the connection between Fragile X and autism, and if their child has autism, they would go up to the doctor and say, okay, can we test for Fragile X? And then I think it's okay
Of
either
course,
way.
of course,
Because
of
the
course.
family is receiving the help
Right,
that
right.
is needed,
Yeah.
which is going to probably change a lot of things for that family.
Yeah. I think us sitting and talking here today is precisely that,
Exactly.
that we are trying to create an awareness amongst people out there, and, families who can really, take this a bit seriously, especially if you have a child with disability and autism. I also wanted to ask you, and it was very interesting when you said that this is genetic. Now, when you talk about genetics, it of course comes down, through your family history. So, should the parents also be tested?
Yes, ideally the parents
Should be tested. So, if you have a child with autism, the child should be tested for Fragile X,
Right.
and then the parents.
Yes, if
And
the
they-
child is
yeah.
positive,
The parents, then the parents.
Yes.
And that's where you get to know the carrier. So it's
Right.
not both parents who are carriers, but just one.
just
So, is there the male female kind of thing, that females are carriers or the males are the carriers of this gene? Any particular?
so it's actually quite interesting here again. There are more females who are carriers and there are more males who are affected.
Okay.
So it's
Oh.
like the numbers would be 1 in 250 females are carriers of this condition, 1 in 800 men are carriers of the condition. But affected, it would be as close to 1 in 2,500 boys versus 1 in 5,000 girls.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. And in India, how many Fragile X cases would you know of?
So
A
in
huge
the
population, and I know it's difficult to kind of.
So I think in the last 20 years of heading this organization, we at our organization have helped nearly 5,500 families in India. And when I say 5,500 families, some families have 4 children affected.
Wow. My God.
Within that family, that same set of parents has 4 children. We have some families wherein there'll be 3 sisters and all 3 sisters are carriers and each of them has 1 child affected.
My God.
So the numbers are a lot larger than they look, but it is awareness which can really take this to another level.
I think, our society is such, when you say that, I think they fear any sort of testing, they fear any sort of detection. I think because they fear, what if it turns out to be positive, then what after that? I think
Right.
that is the biggest question. Now, if
Right.
a woman has to be tested and she turns out to be a carrier, then what advice would you give her, especially if she already has a child
Right.
with fragile eggs,
Right.
or she's a carrier, you know? Because I think that becomes a key issue amongst women and families, I think. That what advice would you give a woman in that condition?
So I think the biggest advice for that woman, A, is she should know she can have another child without the condition.
Okay.
Now, mostly when you come across a child, and if it's the first child who has intellectual disability or autism, and if the family has not been genetically counseled, they have the fear, they live with the fear that we don't want to have more children because what if the other child has this problem?
Right.
Science today can allow you to have a second child without this condition,
Okay.
and it is possible even in India. So that fear is what we want to get rid of.
Right, but how do you, like when you say science can allow you to have another child without this condition, how would that be possible
So
if she's
ideally, the oldest way is the mother gets pregnant. At 12 weeks, we do amniocentesis,
Right.
and you can test whether the fetus is affected or not.
correct?
And then it's the mother's decision whether she wants to carry on with the child or not.
Okay.
I personally call it empowering a woman
To take that decision. Yeah, yeah.
with information to make an informed decision.
Agreed.
The second step, which is also very available now in India, is PGD. That's pre-implantation genetic diagnosis.
Okay.
So we've all heard of IVF.
Yeah, yeah.
Now this is one step after the embryos are formed.
Correct.
The embryo is tested to see which is the healthy embryo,
All right.
and only the healthy embryos are implanted in the mother.
All right. Okay.
And this was not available in India up till 5 years ago, but now is available. There are families who have made use of this. Of course, it's a lot more expensive than the traditional method, but if it allows the family's pocket, there are families who have gone ahead, taken this route, and have
Had a
child.
second child. Okay.
The third option, which of course most families are first resistant to, is a donor egg or a donor embryo.
Right.
But I feel that as a doctor or as an organization, it is our role to give them the options that are available.
Of course. Of course.
And then let them take a decision.
Right.
At least we don't want them to ever feel that I made a decision without knowing something,
Correct.
which I personally think is very unfair.
Yeah.
Today we all talk about women empowerment, women empowerment. I think for a woman, getting information about the child she carries in her womb and she's going to live her entire life with,
Of course. Of course.
it's her right to know about the status of that child. What is incorrect in it?
I think that's very, very important, and information is empowerment.
Yes.
And I think it's with that information that you take a informed decision, as you very rightly said, you know, and I think that's something which is so important, especially for a woman. And I remember when I was pregnant, I had a very late pregnancy.
Okay.
And I had to go through the 12-week you know, and the doctor insisted. And I was scared, you know, both me and my husband were scared because, and we had to, you know, keep that in mind, that what if, what is the decision that we, so it was with that information that we went ahead and did amnio. Otherwise I would have said, I don't want to do amnio, whatever happens is fine.
Right.
But I think that was a decision which we both took together, and you know, had to go forward from there, because I've seen parents with you know, differently able children. I've seen, you know, the whole process, and I know how difficult it is. But you know, you know, at least with this information, people have options. And I see so many young girls today going through IVF, repeated IVFs over and over again. Is that a red flag too?
It's very interesting you brought that up. So, 20% of women who are carriers of the FMR1 gene are susceptible to having fertility problems.
Okay. Okay.
So, if I put it in numbers, I would say 1 in every 100 women who walks into an IVF clinic could be a carrier for Fragile X.
Okay.
So we've even given the parameters to the IVF doctors and said if a woman comes into the clinic and has XYZ parameters like
Right.
a low ovarian reserve, high FSH, low AMH, and no other reason for this being her seen, before you go into extensive testing and start an IVF cycle, do one blood test for Fragile X to see if she's a carrier for Fragile X.
Correct. Right.
We have case studies and examples of women who have been through 1, 2, 3, and 4 years of IVF, innumerable cycles. Put aside the finances,
Of
put
course, yeah.
aside the emotions, and then the 6th year
She-
as a child with Fragile X syndrome.
My God.
So at that point, you feel like saying that why didn't the doctor know about this? Had the doctor told me to do that one test, I would not have resisted.
Exactly.
So that is why we we are at Fragile X Society have stepped into our 20th year. We'll complete 20 years of being here this year, and it's our mission to spread awareness. I think, in short, I would say it's our mission that every woman should be empowered,
Yeah.
and this is a huge step towards women empowerment.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I completely agree.
So it's like very unfair if a woman goes through 5 cycles of IVF to have a child with the condition. Is she prepared for it? I'm not saying it's wrong to have a child with a condition. No. But it should be an informed decision.
And then it's your choice.
That's
Of course, of course.
So giving her the information to make the decision is the job of the doctor. And that is where we want to try and step up the level of awareness, make people more aware. And so many women are there when they see our live sessions, they see our information, they'll call and say, okay, these are our parameters, I've gone through 5 years of IVF, do you think I should go for testing? A few of them do turn out to be positive.
Yeah.
And that changes their whole route ahead, which is actually empowering them.
I agree. I agree. You know, like you said, you can even test the embryo, right?
Right.
So that is another option a doctor would have.
Yes.
Is if they feel these are healthy embryos,
Yes.
just test the embryos
Yes.
before you implant them, right?
Yes.
So I think there are options. There are options, and I think people need to know that. So there should not be fear. In fact, like you very rightly said, it should be an informed decision, by the mother and the father. And like I said, people feel so scared about everything. There is so much of fear. And once you know that you have these options, and your family knows that you have these options, I think it's always better to take a much informed decision.
Absolutely.
For your child which is still to be born, and for yourselves.
And your whole life.
Completely,
I mean, that child
yes.
who comes in,
Yeah.
whether the child is neurotypical or with special needs, is going to actually rule the rest of your
Sure.
80 years on the planet.
Of
It's going to
course.
change your financial decisions,
Everything.
decisions for your career, for everything. So then why not be aware?
Sure. And it's sad actually, because kids who are born with this condition, to parents who can afford,
Right.
is a different matter, because you will do everything for that child. You'll go to any length to give him the best.
Right.
But what about those parents who really won't be able to afford that?
Absolutely.
And those are the parents, I think, who need this information, who
Yes.
need to know, because that do they have options, and especially women in that society are the most vulnerable. because for them I think decision making is the last thing on the agenda. Everybody else is making decisions for them.
Right.
So I think this information and this awareness is really, really very, very important. And I think I have asked you, I think all the questions I had made a note of. And if I have left out anything, Shalini, please.
So I would just add, while we talked about women and families from different economic
Yeah,
status,
right.
we had a family. The husband is a pan wala, and when we talked about therapy, he saying, "Madam, हम महीने का 10,000 रुपया कमाते हैं, हम इसको therapy के लिए कैसे लेके जाएगा?"
Exactly.
We had another family where the typical working class, labor class, for them, every new child is two more working hands.
Of course.
But if a child has special needs, it's the total opposite.
Completely.
And these are stories that truly move us and want us to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think anyone who's worked with disability will vouch for that, because you've seen what a parent goes through with that child, and
Right.
what the child goes through, and especially when there is something where they can't afford anything.
Right.
It could be the basic things of therapy, and especially when a child is given therapy right from a very young age, they improve.
Totally.
We've seen it with cerebral palsy, with autism, with
Right.
so many other disabilities.
Right.
But if the parent doesn't have any option, what would be the life of that child?
It's very different.
And I think that's something which is point to really ponder on, and I think this awareness is very, very important. So thank you so much
Thank
for opening up my mind and answering all my questions. You must be answering these questions to a lot of people, but I think it is really important for people to know.
I think it's really amazing for you to take the time out and show interest in this condition, because you are going to magnify the work we are doing, and that will really help society.
I hope I can do that. I hope I can do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. Now, I would like you to meet someone very interesting and someone who speaks her mind. Her name is Veena Naren, and she's a parent of a Fragile X child. Hi, Veena.
Hi.
So wonderful to meet you.
Same.
I'm not going to ask you too many questions. I just want you to open up and talk about your journey with Varun, your son.
Yeah, so Varun had speech delays, and that's how he started. And being a special educator, I just felt there's something wrong with Varun. And we started our speech therapy. So early intervention, I think, has really helped. So I think that would be one thing which I would always say works well with children, irrespective of whether you have Fragile X or not, a child with special needs. And so we went to many doctors, and we've got different diagnoses. And though we continued our therapies, anxiety is such a major portion of Fragile X, and that took away a lot of learning even from Varun. And we would see the huge anxiety. And my husband and I both like to read a lot, and we were reading the paper one day, and we just saw this article which Shalini had put up. This was in 2010, and both my husband and I said, "Oh my God, this is just Varun," But it was just that. I don't want to call it higher functioning, but Varun's cognitive abilities were good. So even doctors would never label him with this. But we said, except for that cognition part, everything else seems fine. Whether it was the infections in the ears that he used to get, and a lot of things, which said, I conceived late. So seeing that, I think, my husband and I sat that whole night, read up about Fragile X, and, by morning we were like, yeah, I think this is clear, he has Fragile X. And I remember contacting Shalini, because we checked up who's Fragile X in India, and, we saw her name, and once we did that, we were like, I remember Naren telling Shalini, we want to test, and she thought we are one of those paranoid parents, and we told her, listen, if we get the diagnosis, we are very happy because we need a closure. We need something to help out our child.
And how old was Varun at that time?
When we got this thing was 2010.
So he was
10.
10
He's
years
a 2000
old.
year born.
Okay.
2000, sorry.
So he was 10 years old.
He was 10 years old when I mean, we believed to the best of the doctors who diagnosed him with ADHD, which a lot of children with Fragile X, because it is one of the secondary problems,
Correct.
It's not the primary problem. And some thought he was autistic, and I would keep telling, no, he doesn't have autism. But, at that time autism had just come up, So we did have all that, but we were kind of sure he doesn't have autism. And having been in that field and having worked with a lot of kids with autism, I was like, sure, this guy doesn't have autism. And there were doctors who felt, oh, she's just not wanting to accept. And, you do go through all that. But I think the moment she felt we will feel bad about it, and just said, no, he has. And of course, there is sadness because you know that you're confirmed with something that, you don't want. Or my husband must have been a little more upset than I was.
Before this, the doctors hadn't diagnosed him with autism or anything of that sort.
So it was diagnosed for ADHD.
Only
so
ADHD.
Okay. And there were doctors who would say, because a lot, like Shalini would tell you, a lot of features, there is no eye contact.
Right.
So a lot of people mistake Fragile X even with autism.
Correct, yeah.
And there is, one is of course, there's anxiety is also huge in autism. And there is no eye contact. And a lot of, the sensory issues are terrible even in Fragile X. So, so doctors at that point were just learning about autism. I'm talking about the year 2010 when autism had just come up in India also. And for them it was anything
beyond that was
autism.
Correct.
Right? So, so though they did diagnose a lot of other people, I don't know, for some reason Varun was never diagnosed with. Even if we were told, do it, we would have gladly done tests. But we immediately did the test, and even I remember there also we were told, I don't think he has. We were like, okay, it's fine, you can. And this after doing the test, I remember telling Shalini, I went to one of the best doctors, and he said, no, he can't have Fragile X. I had it without telling the doctor, but that is it, So again, what happens is each child is different. Even in Fragile X, it's an umbrella. It's like autism. So Varun is cognitively good, but it's because a lot of therapy. He has huge anxieties in it today. He's an excellent artist. He does a lot of artworks, and he's an excellent baker.
Wow.
So
Nice.
all that is there, but there are anxieties, and we do have our bad moments. So, but I think the key is that we need to tell parents first is that, as Shalini said, if you do have a child with autism, please test him for Fragile X. Because you may, and I think we have seen also parents who have 2 children with autism,
Yes.
and then that would be certainly a red flag saying that please go and test.
Correct.
And as you said, therapies may be similar. But what worked for us particularly was, because my husband is one of those medications, and he is like, I need to make your life also better.
Of course.
And I think in India, doctors have a lot to do with helping out parents. We are trying to help the child, but they don't realize that unless the parent is good, the child is not.
Not good, of course.
So I think that was the key thing, and I think that is another key thing we have to work with doctors, because doctors are only talking about therapy, and the amount of parent struggles. We all cried alone.
Of course.
And it is very tough.
It's a very tough. That's
It
what I
is.
think the conversation with Shalini was just that. Yeah, it is.
Yes. And all families are not as helpful. I have been extremely lucky. I have a very open. My husband was very open, and but everyone is not. And financially, as you said, we are financially well off, so
Correct.
we can afford to do therapies. We can afford to do a lot of things,
Sure.
which many others can't. So I think, so what helped us is, of course, the diagnosis helped for us particularly because my husband was, now I want to see what treatments I can get for him.
Yeah.
And we took some treatments which really helped Varun.
Oh, that's
Really helped Varun because he had a lot of aggressive issues, and that is a total no-no in a school setup, and
Yes.
we've struggled with that. And I think medications for us have also helped, along with therapies,
Right.
and along with the kind of people you associate yourself with, which we've all done, and I think as parents we all do. So I think
So, what is the message you'd really like to give parents out there? And what is that one very important takeaway, where you can, your advices to parents and who go through, at least like you said, if a parent has one child with autism and again then a second child, that
Right.
means that's the biggest red flag. So, what is the message you'd like?
so. One is, first, let's go and test. That is the first thing. Second thing, we all want our children to go do their 10th, do their 12th, but sometimes I think just being able to do a skill well.
Yes.
I mean, we chose for Varun not to do his NIOS, not because he's not smart.
Yeah.
We know he's smart, but he has skills today. So Varun is already an entrepreneur today.
Wonderful.
So when parents tell me, oh, but he was so good, I said, no, I was consistent. And consistency, again, that's something which parents never do. Because you go for therapy, they say, oh, therapy kar liya, be finished.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to keep
Constant.
working at home. And parents need to believe that their child can
Do it. I think that's the most important.
Yes. So even today when we speak, that's the only thing I tell them. They say, no, maybe he was good. I said, all children are good. I think it's...
And I think it's only the parent who recognizes the potential.
Yes.
And then you kind of, work with that potential in that child.
See, we do not like the term vocation. Everyone wants
Yeah,
to
yeah.
call a job, oh, that's
Huh.
nice. But what is a job? It's a vocation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, today Varun earns a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that is his job.
Great.
So-
And then you hone his ability,
That's
on-
it.
Yeah.
And everyone is capable. And
Yeah,
that
of
is
course.
something I think we always tell parents,
Thank
listen, your child is capable. But go one step at a time. You don't try to make him teach math
Yeah.
when you have still not taught him ADLs. And which is, I think, the key to learning. Because you can't go to a school if you are not trained for,
course.
your own
Yeah.
everyday life skills. So I think we need to also be practical, pragmatic, that this is my ability of my child.
Yeah.
I can't compare him with another child.
Correct.
My child is totally different from her child. And he has some other abilities which my child doesn't have. And my child has something which he doesn't have. So which is also fine.
I agree.
So, if I want to intervene, Veena, if I would ask you today to your current situation with Varun,
Mhm.
name one difficulty which you wish you could deal with better or have a solution for. And I would want you to tell us 10 achievements of Varun, because I know we at Fragile Society say Varun Naren is our rock star,
Oh, lovely.
multi-talented, whether it comes to playing the ukulele, whether it's
Wow.
caricature, whether painting, photography, cooking, baking. So we would like to
Fantastic.
hear it from you.
Yeah. So let me start with the negative first. And
Like every mother.
Like every mother.
Just
Yeah.
one. Just
So
one.
I remember and Varun said, but I was so good in all these. And I said, no, but that
That
one
one.
bad, no, I will remember that. So for Varun, yeah. So, so we have, because he has these huge anxiety issues, he doesn't like people coming close to him.
Right.
And India being the country that we are, we love people hugging.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Shalini, Varun is the brand ambassador for social distancing. They should have called him for that. And I think for us, COVID made a huge, it was a blessing in disguise. Because people realized they can't hug each other.
Correct.
And what we've been saying for donkey's years, which nobody listened to. And it helped us because we do struggle with that even today.
Right.
Travel is a big struggle
Sure.
because he can get a little aggressive in the sense that because he's scared someone is coming close
Yeah.
to him.
Right.
So we do buy an empty seat always for him.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of challenges He wants to go, he wants to travel, he loves going. But with these challenges, it becomes difficult. So I think that is one thing. And though he knows, and then when he has an episode, he does write a big email or a big note saying, I'm sorry I did it. So I think there it is a tough thing as a parent, and of a 22-year-old who's strong, it is tough.
Yes.
But saying that apart, I think he's come a long way. And I think the credit to an extent goes to us as parents for not pushing him towards academics.
Right.
I think that is where I keep telling parents, do not push for the child to do 10th and 12th and then do what?
Exactly. I agree with
Do
you.
what?
100%.
So instead, build on their skills.
Skills, yeah.
And today, Varun is a caricature artist. He
Lovely.
gets commissioned to do caricature work. He gets orders for baking. And again, these were things, I put him in a small course.
Mhm.
And the parents say, why are you doing it? And no, what happens is people say, oh, you should have made him do study, He's so good with it. And we know with children with Fragile X, math is and it is a mess with him also. So he can't do math for nuts. And we always keep telling, but we always think that, okay, we have credit cards, we have debit cards, so we teach him instead to use a calculator.
Right.
So these are things parents should work on.
towards, yeah.
So if you're wanting to do it, make your life easier with your child.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know everything in the world.
Of course,
You maybe do something else. And he's in fact through Atypical, he also has taken 6 caricature workshops for the big IT giants. He's done with Zensar, ThoughtWorks, Wipro, Accenture.
Wow.
And he got paid for it.
That's superb. That's amazing, really.
And then even with Shell,
Right.
so he did an offline workshop. They invited us to Bangalore.
Okay.
And he did a workshop there with
How
the
wonderful.
employees.
How wonderful.
So he is, and he's always loved to teach, whether it is
Really?
baking
Yeah?
or whether, and so
Wow.
he is super thrilled to be teaching
Lovely.
people. So I
Yeah.
think that,
That's fantastic.
yeah.
And I wish our education system could be like this for every child.
Yes.
To really understand, every child's potential and really work on that.
Yes. Because they're
Yeah.
happier.
They're
Finally,
happier,
he's
much
doing what
happier.
he is
Yes.
passionate about.
Yeah, of course. Not every child can become a math genius or a science genius,
And he's also typical kid who
Yeah.
will say, you know what, I don't want to do it.
Correct.
So today I said, why don't you bake a cake? She's coming.
I don't-
No, but he doesn't care. Whoever.
Oh,
will.
exactly.
He
Yeah.
said, I want to bake. I said, okay, don't make. But,
Of course.
and sometimes he even tells you by, he says, I have people become so lazy. Why do they order from me? Shouldn't they be making their own? I will give them a recipe. So, so that is also one
Yeah,
for you. And I tell him you're supposed to be a businessman, but he doesn't care. And he always wants to retire. So,
I think the beautiful thing, sorry I button, is Varun has unique abilities, a combination of unique abilities, which is very difficult to find within one person.
no, it is not difficult, Shalini. I think it is just that parents.
Don't try that.
It
That's
is
what I'm
there
trying
in
to
every
say.
kid. Yes.
But being able to showcase it, put it out there,
Yeah.
take lessons with the corporate, you have actually been a medium for him to
Yes.
do everything,
Yeah.
which is unique.
Yes.
That is unique because everyone gets stuck. Okay, he's good with baking, let's stick to baking. No.
Yeah, or put him in a school.
And now he's doing coding. In fact,
Yeah.
he is now
Wow.
doing advanced coding, and I didn't believe that he would be able to do it. And he's going to learn JavaScript, and I'm like, really?
Wow.
He's going to be doing this? Okay, good.
That's
But the
fantastic.
idea is,
Amazing.
I
Yeah.
think all
That's
of us
amazing.
need to teach our children to be lifelong
Lifelong
learners.
learners.
I
I
think
agree.
that is-
That's the most important. Yeah, it's not like, you just, every child is dying to get out of school,
Oh, yes, yes.
dying to finish off their studies and then just stop. Yeah, the lifelong learning doesn't happen, and they get,
I have a 22-year-old entrepreneur who
Yes.
is multi-talented, whose parents believe in him, and they've really helped him achieve his potential.
Yes.
Today he's a happy, young, confident individual.
That's so wonderful.
We don't find too many neurotypical 22-year-olds
Yes,
who are
not
so
at all.
confident and
Not
happy.
at all. Yeah.
So, as a parent, I think Veena has done an amazing job in recognizing
Super.
and exploring all the skills
Yeah.
for Varun.
No, and I think parents just need to be open. I remember when Varun would do paintings, I would just put it up on our wall.
Yeah, and I see all these are Varun's paintings.
all are Varun's.
They're so amazing.
All
All of these also.
Yeah. He's
Really?
caricature.
Yeah, you were telling me, but they're
No,
fabulous.
but I think the key is parents say, ये तो ऐसे ही drawing किया है, and we keep it inside.
Yeah.
So
But
even
this
as a
is-
kid,
yes,
earlier Varun, I would just put up, I would frame it,
Yes.
and
And I'm seeing that it's so beautiful. All of
but
it.
then children also feel okay, maybe I'm
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think
And they want to do better.
they want to do better.
But he'll make your caricature only if he wants to.
Yeah, yeah.
So for
He's
me,
made hers.
He made
Okay.
mine, and I had to send 3 photographs. He chose one which he liked, and then he made the caricature. So he's very picky,
No, but I love them. I think it's
I think they're
amazing.
stunning. And he's also done one for all the cooking.
Yes.
All the
So he's
experts.
fascinated by the Last Supper.
Oh,
So he's been telling us, take me to Italy for
right.
that. So he did an entire series on the Last Supper.
Yeah.
So he did with one with Mickey Mouse and
Really?
with Walt Disney. So they and the 13.
Yeah.
And then one he did just with all the chefs. I will
Wow.
show you those. But
Yeah.
he really did that, and he really enjoyed doing that. So
That's so wonderful, really, and
I
so
think-
much talent.
what kids need to just do is, what parents need to do is just tell their kids, do what
Do what you want to do. I think that's
don't
most.
do because Varun is doing it.
Yes.
You do it because you
Yeah,
like to.
yeah.
I think today, in hindsight, so many years from 2010, when I received Naren's call, and I actually did think, oh, he's a hyper father. I mean, who's missing fragile eggs in today's day and date with a 10-year-old son? And then going ahead and doing the test and me calling you with the result, and you said, Shalini, thank you, because I've got closure today for everything that I've been through for the last 20 years. First trying to conceive and then have no diagnosis or not be sure of his diagnosis. And the way you and Naren took it up with the treatment, the medication, and Varun's come a real long way, where we have a young entrepreneur who's happy, confident, and I think kudos to you as a parent.
Thank you.
Really. And I think so many parents can learn from you.
Yes.
You know, and just seeing the progress of
Absolutely.
Varun, you know,
Absolutely.
It's
That's very
No, I think
Huge
every
inspiration.
parent just needs to believe in their child.
And their child.
That's
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and feel that
Yeah.
they are capable.
Of
And
course.
not compare with another child. but
Agreed.
Take it as,
Yeah.
That's true.
look at what their child is good at.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
That was what would sum up.
I think this, and and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Shalini and Veena, to really talk about your story. And it's been a real learning experience for me as well. And I think just one message to everyone
is don't fear this. I think it's very important, when you're in a position like this, like Veena said, get closure, understand what it is, get yourself tested. I think once that happens, I think a lot of good things can happen. And by not knowing, or by putting something under the carpet, not wanting to know, will make it worse for you and your child. So please be informed and take an informed decision. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.